I want to talk about a subject that is kind of problematic to discuss, as usual, where whenever I meet more people that this applies to, or that, have this mindset, it helps me better articulate my argument and fuel this discussion. So I think I can try and articulate it well enough that I'd be able to pass it on. I'm not entirely sure because it's not the heat of the moment. Usually it works much better in the heat of the moment because there's a specific subject that we're discussing. But in this case, it's going to be way more general, and I hope I'll manage to pass it on properly. So what I'm trying to talk about today is general skepticism. And as a baseline, skepticism is a very good thing that I support wholeheartedly. I think that being skeptical of pretty much everything you can is a very good thing to an extent. There's always going to be that to an extent at the end of that sentence because there's always a line. If you just completely don't accept anything that you've been told by anyone ever, then that's not really good. You should have some level of acceptance. But there's a lot of general skepticism that you should have for a lot of cases depending on what we're talking about. Clearly, if there's a headline or a tagline in some kind of article or, new research shows or something like that, generally it's the media. Yes, they are manipulating you, but it's not like everything is trying to manipulate you and everything is trying to lie or deceive you or change your opinion in some evil manner with some evil intent. Sometimes it's just a friend who's passionate about a subject and he comes on and tells you about this subject. And you were much more inclined to believe that person because he's a friend, he's someone we can trust. That's fine, that makes sense. But you should also be skeptical of that for the simple reason that he might not have all the information. Whatever works for him might not work for you, or it might not even work for him, but he doesn't know because he doesn't have all the information. He doesn't have full information, and he's passionate about someone, which can sometimes blind you to what it is that you're talking about. But that's part one. Being skeptical of a lot of things is a good thing. It is a good thing to an extent. And that's really where I'm talking about specific people who I've met that are very skeptical of pretty much everything. It's kind of like I said, it's like, no, I'm not accepting everything you're telling me. It's like, I don't believe you. I take with a grain of salt or, with a bowl of salt because I want to be careful of absolutely everything. And that's a little bit too extreme. But there's the way that I try and diffuse that situation, or will not really diffuse it. Usually I fuel things. I don't diffuse them because I'm a horrible person. But I do enjoy discussion way too much. But the cool thing here is to think about yourself and thinking about yourself. Humans are very, very adaptable and we're very good at adjusting to whatever situation we are in and whatever situation we are put in. And the thing is that you can be skeptical about everything, but a lot of times people aren't skeptical about themselves. And what I mean is that no matter who you are or what you are, you have a lot of biases coming with you. And these are biases that exist from how you were brought up. Because as a kid, when you're 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-old, you're already developing quite a lot of, a basic skill set and a basic way you do things. And it could be everything from how you eat and what you eat to how you're used to talking and your dialect. And it could be everything. Absolutely everything of how you live. These are things that you were brought up. And big influencers are clearly, let's say, your parents, your mom and dad, or your brothers and sisters, that they can affect how you do things. And then when you grow up and you become a skeptical adult at, say, age 20 or something, I don't know, we're not going to discuss exactly when is the age where you stop being completely very much influenced by your surrounding and be more of an adult, of a skeptical person. It doesn't really matter the age, but it does, people grow up and people evolve. Duh. But you do come into whatever it is that you are right now, whomever you are right now, as skeptical as you are right now, you come up to that with all those biases in place. And the question is, can you see those biases? And can you actually look on yourself, at yourself with those biases and be skeptical of that as well? And that's really difficult because we're so used to these things. The things that we're most used to is the things that we never think about, oh my God, maybe that's a thing that we could do better. And I've talked about this several times before in different contexts, but this is this is a little bit different, I think. That when you really try and think about how you come up, and this applies mostly to really people who are incredibly skeptical of absolutely everything around them. They're usually not that skeptical about themselves and how they currently do something. And this is especially relevant when you try and change their opinion, when you try and show them, let's say, a lot of research or a lot of evidence towards a specific path, this thing is better than what you were doing. They could tell you, well, I don't believe this, and I'm very skeptical of this research, and I'm very skeptical. Okay, why aren't you skeptical of how you're doing things right now? Why aren't you skeptical of that? So this is the way that you're doing something, and I'm showing you research and information that you should change it, and you're skeptical of that. That's great. But if you're skeptical of that, and that's perfectly fine to be, you have to also be skeptical of what you're doing right now. Because if you take something, if it's just over there, you're just doing your thing, you're just doing your thing. But if you take it up to inspection and you are skeptical of changing it, then you have to also be skeptical of what you're doing right now. You have to look at everything. And that's something that people often fail to do. In faced with change, I am skeptical, but I'm not looking at what I'm doing right now. What is wrong with what I'm doing right now? Instead of saying what is wrong with how the new way that you proposed. And that's really tricky to keep in your head when you're arguing. Really tricky and really interesting. And that's why I try my best to do it, but it's hard, and I think it's a very interesting point that keeps me up at night. Not really, but yeah, I think it's a really interesting point to try and inspect things and be skeptical towards one's self as well. Did I pass that along in any... Was that okay? Did you get what I was talking about? I hope so. I have no idea. But yeah, that's what goes on in my head sometimes. Cool. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.